that.
Yes, also, it's with heavy hearts that we share our condolences to the Kirk family. It's a significant loss. After the heartbreaking assassination of Charlie Kirk, the whole world has been impacted. He was not only a cultural leader, but a voice for such a time as this.
You know, I believe that an army has been ignited in a way that we probably cannot even know or understand. I just believe that we're going to see what the enemy, of course, meant for evil, he's going to turn for good.
Away from the ongoing Daystar saga and all the controversies that have dominated recent conversations, a different video surfaced, one that caught many people's attention for a far more emotional reason. In this clip, Joni Lamb and her husband Doug Weiss paid tribute to Charlie Kirk. Their tone was solemn, their message heavy with grief, and their expressions sincere as they honored a man they described as both a cultural force and a spiritual voice in this generation.
Some people are saying that this is the igniting of the third revival of America. And I believe that. Their church attendance has gone up. The young people seeking God has gone up. God is on the move. If you didn't know who Charlie Kirk was, you do now.
That's right.
Okay, 24/7 news coverage, every form of media, social media is blowing up. One friend of mine interviewed Charlie Kirk. He said, my interview with Charlie Kirk got 500,000 views in 3 hours.
They offered deep condolences to the entire Kirk family, acknowledging the enormous loss the world felt following Charlie's passing. According to them, his death was not just a tragic moment for those close to him. It was a moment that echoed through the nation and beyond. The tribute quickly spread online. Viewers described it as heartbreaking but powerful, a testament to how deeply Charlie had affected people across political, social, and religious lines. Joni and Doug referred to him as a young man fully committed to Jesus, someone who inspired courage in others just by living boldly. They recalled the faith-driven side of his work, as much as the political activism that had made him a household name. They also mentioned how both Rachel and Josh admired him, emphasizing that his influence reached far beyond a single circle or community. They expressed a belief that even though an assassin had ultimately taken his life, that violent act did not silence him. In their words, it amplified his message. They painted a picture of a man whose legacy would multiply, creating thousands of Charlie Kirks, each rising with renewed boldness. The tribute concluded with reassurance that although Charlie had been struck down, the message of Christ he carried would continue to spread, inspiring courage and revival in others. That tribute opened the door to examining something deeper: the impact of Charlie Kirk, the movement he built, and the cultural footprint he left behind. To understand Charlie's influence, one has to move beyond the simple statements of admiration or criticism and venture into the mechanics of what he actually shaped. His rise was not typical. It did not follow the slow, traditional path most political voices walk. Instead, it came through a mixture of timing, media, youth culture, and a kind of relentless smart marketing that, whether one liked him or not, made him impossible to ignore. Charlie Kirk first entered the political arena as a teenager. While most people his age were still finding direction, he was already writing, speaking, organizing, and planting seeds for what would soon become Turning Point USA. Founding it at just 18 years old, he tapped into something the American conservative movement had been struggling with for years: a lack of unified, youthful energy. Conservative ideas were present on campuses, but they were scattered, often overshadowed by progressive groups. What Charlie understood early, and what few others noticed, was that the ideological battles shaping America weren't being won in Congress or on cable news. They were being won in lecture halls, student unions, dorm rooms, and campus cultures. Charlie took campus conservatism, polished it, branded it, and scaled it. Turning Point USA wasn't just another political club. It became a national movement with a distinct personality. Bright colors, bold fonts, high-energy conferences, celebrity speakers, and on-campus recruitment made it feel like the youth version of a political lifestyle brand. Through TPUSA, Charlie introduced a new kind of conservative activism, one that felt modern, sharp, visually strategic, and unapologetically vocal. This was intentional. He treated messaging the way a tech founder treats product development: fast, consistent, and innovative. Within a few years, he had chapters across the country, large conferences that felt closer to concerts than political gatherings, and a growing influence on college campuses. Supporters said he gave them courage to speak up in environments where they felt silenced. Critics accused him of intensifying culture wars and turning universities into battlegrounds. Regardless of perspective, one fact stood out. Charlie Kirk changed the tone of youth activism in America. But his influence didn't stop at campuses. The next stage of his rise was his mastery of digital communication. While many older political commentators struggled to adapt to the speed and volatility of online platforms, Charlie embraced them. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, podcasts. He used them all not just as communication tools, but as engines of influence. He understood that modern persuasion was about attention, repetition, and accessibility. His posts were short, sharp, and engineered for sharing. His speeches were clipped into viral moments. His commentary was designed to be debated, reacted to, or defended. Love him or hate him, people engaged with him. This digital reach transformed him from a niche campus organizer to a national political figure. He became a frequent guest on television, a speaker at major conferences, and an influencer who could mobilize students, energize conservatives, and provoke opponents. The stronger his presence grew, the more polarized the reactions became. Supporters saw him as a bold truth-teller, a young man unafraid to challenge institutions, media narratives, or political power structures. Critics saw him as dangerously influential, someone who oversimplified complex issues or intensified cultural divides. But both sides agreed on one thing. He was shaping conversations in ways few others could. Charlie also stepped into a specific cultural niche: the merging of conservative ideology with Christian identity. While many activists separated faith and politics, he did the opposite. He framed cultural battles as spiritual battles. He described American values as rooted in biblical principles. He spoke of faith not just as a private conviction, but as the foundation of national identity. This resonated deeply with younger Christians who felt their beliefs were increasingly marginalized. It also amplified his influence beyond political spaces into religious communities. Pastors, churches, ministries, and faith-based organizations often echoed his messages, creating a powerful cross-network of support. This combination, youth activism, political commentary, digital strategy, and faith-based identity, produced one of the most impactful conservative figures of his generation. He changed the expectations for what a young activist could achieve. He made political involvement feel immediate and accessible. He redefined what campus activism looked like. And for many young conservatives, he became not just a voice, but a model. Another part of his influence came from his ability to connect with emotions, particularly frustration, fear, identity, and belonging. He tapped into the feelings of students who believed their views were mocked, dismissed, or punished in educational settings. He validated their experiences, amplified their voices, and gave them platforms to speak through TPUSA chapters, conferences, and social media. He didn't just represent them, he mobilized them. He created a sense of camaraderie, a collective mission, and a feeling that they were part of a larger story. This is why, even after his passing, people continue to say his movement lives on through those he inspired. One cannot discuss Charlie's impact without acknowledging how polarizing he was. His rhetoric often provoked intense criticism from media outlets, activist groups, and political opponents. But controversy, in his case, didn't weaken him, it strengthened him. His critics often unintentionally amplified his platform, making him more recognizable, more influential, and more entrenched in the cultural conversation. Controversy made him the center of debates, and debates increased his reach. Whether he was being praised or criticized, people were talking about him. The most interesting aspect of Charlie's influence is how multi-layered it was. He was not simply a commentator, or an activist, or a strategist. He was all of these at once. He built institutions. He reshaped youth activism. He influenced political dialogue. He impacted faith communities. He created a media presence that reached millions. He sparked debates across the country. His work touched education, religion, politics, culture, and digital communication simultaneously. That is why his name continues to evoke strong reactions even after his passing. Joni and Doug's tribute captured a part of this complexity. They didn't just speak about his political actions. They spoke of his spiritual example, his courage, his love for Christ, and his willingness to stand firm in the face of opposition. They described him as a witness, someone who lived intentionally, someone whose conviction shaped not just arguments but lives. They saw him not just as a political figure, but as a young man who represented something larger. Their tribute took the narrative beyond politics and into legacy. When they said his assassin amplified his message instead of silencing it, they were referencing a belief shared by many of his supporters, that Charlie's ideas had gained renewed momentum because of the tragedy surrounding his death. In the wake of his passing, more students, more churches, more commentators, and more organizations revisited his speeches, his writings, his interviews, and his teachings. His clips circulated again. His conferences were rewatched. His quotes resurfaced. People who had never followed him before began learning about him. His supporters described this as a kind of multiplication, where his message spread wider after he was gone. Charlie's impact can also be seen in the way he shaped leadership expectations for young conservatives. Before his rise, the political world often expected young people to be followers, not leaders. He challenged that idea by proving that a teenager could build a national organization, influence public discourse, and stand shoulder to shoulder with senior political figures. His presence made space for other young voices. He demonstrated that youth was not a barrier but an asset. Today, many young conservative podcasters, influencers, organizers, and commentators credit Charlie for inspiring them to step forward. His conferences, particularly events like the Student Action Summit and America Fest, became cultural landmarks within conservative circles. They were designed not just as political gatherings, but as immersive experiences, mixing entertainment, worship, speeches, and activism into a single environment that felt electrifying. Thousands of young people attended annually, creating memories, connections, and commitments that strengthened the movement. The scale and energy of these conferences were unlike anything previously seen in conservative youth activism. They became part of Charlie's legacy. One of the most profound aspects of Charlie Kirk's influence was his ability to take complicated issues and make them feel immediate and relevant to the lives of students. Whether he was discussing economics, education, immigration, or cultural identity, he framed concepts in ways that felt personal, urgent, and emotionally resonant. He talked about free speech as a matter of dignity. He talked about national identity as a matter of heritage. He talked about religious freedom as a matter of spiritual survival. This emotional framing helped his audience internalize political ideas not just as abstract theories, but as lived experiences. Charlie's rise also reshaped conservative media ecosystems. He showed older generations how much digital strategy mattered. He built podcasts, social media pages, and video channels that reached millions. He understood timing, tone, and pattern, knowing exactly how to phrase something so that it would generate traction. His approach influenced how many conservative personalities structure their online presence today. His media style, short-form videos, bold statements, strong branding, and rapid responses, became a blueprint others now follow. Even beyond conservative spaces, political analysts studied his strategies. They recognized that he had figured out a formula that resonated deeply with Gen Z and millennials. Some critics studied him to understand how to counter him, while supporters studied him to replicate his success. Either way, he forced political commentators to acknowledge that youth influence was not a side conversation. It was central to shaping the country's future. In religious communities, Charlie's impact was equally notable. He wasn't a pastor, yet he influenced many faith-based organizations. His speeches about faith, culture, and morality became resources used in Bible studies, youth groups, and Christian conferences. He spoke openly about the need for believers to engage in cultural battles, arguing that faith without influence was incomplete. This resonated with Christians who felt the cultural landscape was shifting rapidly and needed voices willing to defend biblical values. His partnership with church leaders, pastors, and Christian influencers contributed to a growing movement that blended religious conviction with cultural activism. When reflecting on Charlie's broader legacy, one cannot ignore the emotional imprint he left on those who admired him. For many, he represented courage. He represented standing firm. He represented the willingness to speak boldly in environments where silence felt safer. To them, he was not just a commentator. They saw him as a young warrior fighting for truth, for faith, and for the future of the country. This emotional connection explains why tributes like Joni and Doug's were so impactful. They express what many supporters felt, but didn't know how to articulate. It is in this emotional imprint that much of his lasting influence resides. Movements do not survive simply through ideas. They survive through meaning. They survive because people feel something when they remember a leader. Charlie's supporters feel that. To them, he was meaningful. The idea that thousands of Charlie Kirks will rise in his place is, of course, symbolic. It refers to the ripple effect of mentorship, influence, and inspiration. Many of the young activists currently hosting podcasts, leading student organizations, producing documentaries, or organizing conferences first entered activism because Charlie inspired them. They are now shaping the next generation, continuing the cycle he began. Charlie Kirk's impact is also tied to the cultural moment he emerged in. America was already in a state of polarization, rapid change, and ideological fragmentation. Social media accelerated conflict and amplified division. Younger generations were increasingly disconnected from traditional political structures. Into that moment stepped a young man who spoke quickly, posted constantly, and framed political issues in terms of identity and morality. His rise was not just personal, it was contextual. He became a symbol of the era's battles. Today, as people reflect on his life, supporters see him as someone who stepped into the tension of the times with bravery. Even after his death, his speeches are replayed, his ideas are debated, his writings are shared, and his movement continues. Legacy is measured not only by what a person builds, but by what remains after they are gone. In Charlie's case, much remains. In the end, his impact can be summarized this way. Charlie Kirk shifted the center of gravity in American youth activism. He reshaped how conservatives engage culture. He brought faith, politics, and digital strategy into one cohesive message. He inspired a generation of young leaders. He provoked national conversations. He built institutions that will likely continue for years. And he left behind a movement that, whether people agree with it or oppose it, cannot be ignored. Joni and Doug's tribute captured the emotional core of that legacy. Their words reflected admiration, grief, hope, and conviction. They saw Charlie not just as a political figure, but as a young man whose life carried spiritual significance. Their tribute expressed what many felt, that Charlie's courage influenced countless others, that his voice resonated deeply, and that his impact will continue through those he inspired. For those who followed him, he was not just a commentator. He was a symbol of boldness, a representative of faith-driven activism, a reminder that youth can lead, a figure whose ideas stirred passion and confrontation. His presence shaped conversations, influenced institutions, and shifted expectations. Even in death, his name continues to carry weight. Charlie Kirk was a complicated figure, admired and criticized, celebrated and debated, influential and polarizing. But his impact is undeniable. His legacy lives in the movement he built, the people he inspired, and the cultural imprint he left behind. And for many who watched Joni and Doug's tribute, one message stood out above all. Even though Charlie is gone, the fire he sparked continues to burn in those who carry forward his mission.